more work on the car lot since we've spent a lot of time there today. On the car lot. So, asymmetric information on the car lot, right? The seller knows more about the car than you. They didn't tell you about that little issue and this little issue and this little creak and that little crack. And so, what's your strategy here? The expected value is what? The expected value of the car, $3,000. So the expected value is different than what you're going to get in reality, right? You're either going to get a lemon, and it's going to suck, $2,000 car, or a $4,000 cherry. That's what's going to happen in reality. But we can go through the Mickey Mouse math and come up with, well, I could expect to get $3,000. That's my expected value. And then the market could be efficient, potentially. But it's not going to be, because people are not liking getting screwed and losing $1,000. If they're not here to gamble, right? They're here to buy a car and get what they think they're paying for. And so if you can't overcome that asymmetric information, then what's your strategy? What's your strategy as a buyer? If you're faced with this circumstance and you can't overcome that uncertainty, what do you do? What's your... You know that there's, out of 10 cars on the lot, half of them are cherries, half of them are lemons, but you can't tell the difference and the seller's not going to tell you. So that's kind of where we're at.
And the sticker price is all $4,000?
Yes, basically, yes, that's right. What's that? Offer two, right? Because if you offer two, you're going to at least get what you paid for, right? And so I think after we kind of work through the thought process there, that is what we call a market failure, because the cherry sellers could sell it, but they're really selling at a loss. They should get $4,000. In fact, you'd be willing to pay for it if you knew you would actually get it. And so this is a market failure, and we would tend to see people just offering the low price. Now, that's not good for sellers of cars. It's not good for buyers of cars in general, too, but especially on the seller side. So laws were passed somewhat in response to this called lemon laws. Are you guys familiar with lemon laws, or have you heard that? So used cars, larger dealers, not mom and pops that are just for sale by owners, but they do have to give essentially a warranty or a guarantee that you could return the car if there's an issue with it. And so that works actually to their advantage. They might have done that on their own anyway to overcome this problem, right? They're like, no, we're trustworthy, we sell good cars. What do we say? If you have a problem, just come back and we'll honor that, right? And all of a sudden that takes away this issue, and they can start selling cars, some of them for $4, some of them still for $2, right? By offering that guarantee or warranty. How does straight salary lead to adverse selection? Salary's too high, you'll get both, right? What about salary too low? Low? Or salary kind of medium? Salary at a kind of going rate. But it's a straight salary. And then let's just say it's pretty good. You're going to get both. The lazy people going to work harder once they're getting that good salary? Probably not, right? So this kind of gets into performance pay and why we see that. if we change the salary scheme, and it seemed like we maybe went over an example similar to this, but if you have a choice of 40,000 straight salary or a salary of 20,000 or all straight commission, you know, but the expected amount you're going to make is 40, then the risk neutral person in theory would take either one, but the productive person might take the commission, right? Because they know they can kick some butt. They know that they can sell ice to an Eskimo type of concept. And so on a straight commission, they'd rather do that if they're expected to make 60,000 if they really bust their tail, as opposed to the straight salary at 40. So we can start to think about how we set up the pay and who's going to come to the job. So on the topic of adverse selection, we don't want to set up a pay scheme so that we are getting the mixed bag of both people jumping on it, but maybe we can set up the pay scheme so that we're actually attracting the productive people and maybe shunning away the lazy people. So then we get some sort of mixed scheme. So one thing we got to be cautious about is people sending up signals. And in fact, I might have shared this before with you on pastors or church type stuff being brought up in a rental application or a rental somewhat interview. Did I ever tell you this? It's a signaling thing. Remember I brought up my Christianity when at the job interview setting? Well, what I noticed over time after being in property management for 20 years is that if somebody tells you that they're Kim Tone and they're thinking about starting a church, or is it okay if we hold youth groups in the living room, or will that be too much noise for the neighbors? They were sending a signal over to me, the landlord, that says, hey, I'm a Christian, I'm a goody-goody, rent to me, even though I might have some other issues on my application or whatever, right? That they're going to be this model tenant. Unfortunately, what I found was the people who overtly brought that to my attention while I was showing them the apartment tended to not be very good tenants. And so they kind of sent out a signal for that reason. But after I was in the business, I noticed that, well, people who turn out to be bad kind of overtly, you know what I mean, like kind of purposely, they don't just casually somehow sneak it in or it was part of the conversation we're having. They just overtly come out and say it. That was a signal to me that they might actually be trouble rather than what the message they were trying to convey. So signaling and screening can go both ways. And we talked about this earlier on how you can turn what would be maybe a screen into a signal by offering to do something, by offering information about yourself or offering to go on commission. Like, oh, well, yeah, I would take that. You know, this would probably be a good thing to do in a job interview, completely fair, is, well, we're thinking about doing 2 compensation schedules. Here's compensation schedule A. Here's compensation schedule B. Which one do you prefer, right? And then all of a sudden you've created a mechanism to where a productive person they might tell you that they prefer this one over this one, rather than even having to put it out on the table. And this could be during the interview process. So they ask 5 people, all of a sudden they've learned who's the one that's going to kick butt by them kind of selecting one of the 2 plans potentially. So during that process, you could potentially offer something. Have you guys ever thought this? I have. And I think companies have used that over time. You know, Super Bowl advertising is probably classic of this, right? So if you can afford to pay for a Super Bowl Sunday ad, you must be a credible thing to throw that kind of money. Although people that think that they've got the next latest greatest pay for a Super Bowl ad and they're just paying and they're not very smart with their money. But it does send a signal to you that, oh, Well, if they can afford that, they must be a good company or have deep pockets or whatever. All right, and we kind of talked about this earlier. Oh, I think this is our very last thing here. Another signaling type of thing. That's it. 2 minutes late, you're gone. Right? Oh, that's not fair. I mean, what if they had this or this happen, or I got in a car accident, or I got whatever. That's their policy, and they're told this on day one, bear in mind, right? So as far as the that's not fair type of stuff, they might even be told. It actually doesn't matter what your excuse is. It doesn't matter whatsoever. So you need to do everything in your power to get here. You know, it's kind of the way it's set up. Tardy and you're gone. Here was the results. 2 candidates are sent home on average. 10 out of the 1,300 workers have significant attendance issues. So bad hires went from 8% to less than 1%. You kind of send the message early at the interview. You work for my company, you're here, you're timely, or whatever, you get turned away. So some of the people get weeded out, but the people who stick around get kind of an important message up front too. So kind of some kind of policy. All right, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about